Hello, and welcome to LSET Tech Bytes.
In today's lesson, we will create a task management web app using PHP before we get started. You need to install XAMP on a computer. XAMP is a free and open-source web server stack package. It includes Apache, MySQL, and PHP. XAMP is perfect for developing web applications. Let's begin. Our first step will be to create a database using MySQL. Go to the localhost dashboard by opening your browser. Please click on PHP, MyAdmin. You can create a database here. As you can see, I have already created a database by clicking on it. To create a table, you must add the table name and the number of columns. Click on the Create button. Let's give the names of the columns and check the box for comments. Once all columns have been filled in, save them. Now let's move on to the coding part. We will create files such as index.php, add task.php, dbconnection.php, edit task.php, and style.css. So, let's dive into the code. Open the index file. Here, I have a basic HTML file that will serve as the structure of our task management system. This line declares the document type and version of HTML we're using. This tag indicates the start of an HTML document. This sets the title of our web page, in this case, Task Management System. Inside the body tag is where the visible content of our web page goes. We have a heading task list to signify that this is where our tasks will be displayed. And then we have a button labeled Add New Task, which will allow users to add new tasks to the system. Now let's move on to the table structure where our tasks will be displayed. TR stands for table row, indicating a row in the table. TH stands for table header, representing a header cell in the table. Now we're going to integrate PHP to fetch and display tasks from our database. This is a PHP code block. Here, we're including a PHP file that contains the connection to our database. We define a SQL query to select all tasks from our database. This variable stores the result of executing the SQL query. Let's jump into the DB connection file here. This opening and closing tag denotes the beginning and end of a PHP code block. Here, we define the name of the server where our database is hosted. Typically, it's localhost if the database server is on the same machine. This variable holds the username used to connect to the database. In our case, it's list. Here, we set the password required to authenticate the user. Make sure to use a secure password in a real-world scenario. This variable stores the name of the database we're connecting to, which is also list in our case. This line establishes a connection to the database server using the MySQL connect function. It takes 4 parameters: server name, username, password, and database name. This is an error handling mechanism. If the connection to the database fails, it executes the code within the curly braces. Now back to the index file. This line initiates a while loop, which will continue executing as long as there are rows returned by the query. Inside this loop, we're fetching each row of the result set as an associative array and storing it in the variable row. This line starts a new table row for each task. Here, we're echoing out the task's ID into a table data cell. This line displays the task's name. Similarly, this echoes the task's description. This line outputs the task's creation timestamp. Finally, we create links for editing and deleting each task, passing the task's ID as a parameter in the URL. We will now proceed to the file add task.php. This line sets up a form that will submit data to the add task P file using the HTTP post method. Here we have a label for the task name input field. This input field allows users to enter the name of the task and is marked as required, meaning it must be filled out before submitting the form. Similarly, this label is for the task description input field. This text area allows users to provide a description of the task. Finally, we have a submit button that users can click to submit the form. Here, we include the PHP file that establishes a connection to our database. This conditional block checks if the form has been submitted via the post method. This line retrieves the task name submitted through the form. Similarly, this retrieves the task description. Here, we construct SQL query to insert the new task into our database table. This line executes the SQL query using the database connection established earlier. After adding the task to the database, we redirect the user back to the home page. This line ensures that the script stops executing after the redirection. Let's move on to the delete.php file. First, we include the PHP file that establishes a connection to our database. This ensures that we can interact with our database within this script. This conditional block checks if the ID parameter is set in the URL. This parameter will be passed when a user clicks on the delete link for a specific task. Here, we retrieve the value of the ID parameter from the URL, which corresponds to the ID of the task to be deleted. This SQL query deletes the task from the database where the ID matches the one passed through the URL. This line executes the SQL query to delete the task from the database using the database connection established earlier. After deleting the task, we redirect the user back to the home page where they can see the updated task list. This line ensures that the script stops executing after the redirection. Let's move on to the edit task.php file. First step, HTML form setup. This line sets up a form that will submit data to the edit task.php file with the task's ID appended to the URL. This input field displays the current task name fetched from the database and allows users to edit it. Similarly, this text area displays the current task description and allows users to edit it. Include dbconnection.php, we include the PHP file that establishes a connection to our database. This conditional block checks if the ID parameter is set in the URL, indicating that the user wants to edit a specific task. Here, we retrieve the ID of the task to be edited from the URL. This SQL query selects the task from the database where the ID matches the one passed through the URL. We execute the SQL query and store the result in the variable result. This line fetches the task details as an associative array and stores it in the variable row. This conditional block checks if the form has been submitted via the post method. Here, we retrieve the updated task name submitted through the form. Similarly, we retrieve the updated task description. This SQL query updates the task in the database with the new task name and description where the ID matches the one passed through the URL. Let's dive into the CSS code and see how we can style our task management system. This block sets the margin and padding of the body and table elements to 0, ensuring consistent spacing. This block styles the links used in our system. It sets padding, font size, background color, text color, border radius, and removes the underline to make the links stand out. Similarly, this block styles a specific button element with an ID of button. It sets padding, font size, background color, text color, border radius, and positions it in the center relative to its parent container. This block styles the table that displays our tasks. It sets the width, border collapse, border, and margin to create a neat and organized table layout. Here, we style the table header cells. It sets the background color, text color, padding, text alignment, and border to make the header stand out. This block styles the form used for adding and editing tasks. It sets the background color, width, margins, padding, border radius, and box shadow to create a visually appealing form. Here, we style the labels used in the form. It sets the font size, margin bottom, text alignment, and text color to enhance readability. This part of the code sets the style for any input fields on a web page. This makes the input fields stretch across the entire width of their container, ensuring they take up all available space. Add some space inside the input fields, making them a bit more comfortable to use. Create some space below each input field, separating them from other elements on the page. Adds a thin gray border around each input field to visually separate them from the rest of the content. Rounds off the corners of the input fields, giving them a smoother appearance. Ensures that the width and height of the input fields include the padding and border, so they don't expand beyond their specified dimensions. This part of the code sets the style for any text areas, multi-line input fields on the page. It's quite similar to the input styles. It ensures text areas also stretch across the entire width of their container, have padding, margin, border, border radius, and box sizing just like input fields. This section styles any submit buttons on the page, typically used in forms, sets the background color of the button to a specific shade of blue, sets the text color of the button to white for contrast against the blue background, removes the default border around the button, gives the button rounded corners, adds padding inside the button, making it a bit larger and easier to click, changes the cursor to a pointer when hovering over the button, indicating that it's clickable. This part of the code styles any H2 headings on the page. centers the text of the H2 headings horizontally on the page. If you found this video helpful and enjoyed learning how to create a task management system, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay updated with our latest tutorials and web development tips. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.